Our reading this morning began with this verse, so that those who dwell at the ends of the earth are in awe at your signs. You make the going out of the morning and the evening shout for joy. Long before anyone could ever conceive of something like a camera, even before the writing of words on paper was possible or writing was convenient, this ancient songwriter tried to capture the beauty and power of the sun rising and setting. The effort reminded me, despite our explosion in technology, little has changed in the human heart. How many times have you been driving in a car and suddenly find yourself surrounded by the most beautiful sunset you can imagine? Colors are exploding on the horizon, and yet they burst with such subtle softness that it calms even the most anxious driver that is caught up in rush hour traffic. Human beings absolutely love sunsets and sunrises. And when we encounter them, our first impulse is to think of a way to capture the beauty, to share it or hold on to it so we can remember the moment. Except when you actually do take the picture, the image never comes out quite like reality. It's missing something. The power is gone. The colors are different. Not quite as overwhelming. Something about the image we look at, even when it is good, feels depressing, like we missed capturing something that was so beautiful. I find it funny that even when we don't have a camera or an image to reference, we look for someone to share what we saw. We come home and say, "Oh, did you see that sunset? Did you see that sunrise? You should have seen, oh my gosh, it was amazing. The colors were like orange and red and green and purple and blue, and there's some yellow and some pink, and the person's looking at you like confused, like, what are you talking about?" And then you can see that they're confused and you say, "Oh, it was kind of like, it was like things were moving over here, and it was more, no, it was more like this." It's like we forget how to even talk when we're trying to describe that beauty. The one saving grace is the person that we're usually speaking to, trying to describe the sunset, understands because they've also seen a sunset or a sunrise they couldn't explain. I'm not a fool. I know the physical and scientific reasons for sunrises and sunsets. They're easily proven by gravity, gravitational pull, orbiting planets, atmospheric particles bending light and influencing colors. The television weather reporter will tell us exactly when the sun will rise and when the sun will set each day. The going out of the morning and the evening, as the psalmist describes, is as predictable, as the rising and the setting of the sun. Isn't that what we say to describe a predictable event? It's as predictable as the sun rises. So why are we so surprised when we find ourselves captivated by a beautiful sunrise or sunset? And when we witness it in a place like the Twin Cities, why do we feel no one else saw it but us? Even if you're out in the country somewhere, on some remote location, we forget that the sunset is actually visible to all those people at that moment in the Midwest, not just in the town or the place that you're standing. I'm not a fool when I say this. Nothing captures the essence of God like a sunrise or a sunset. And what I mean by that is this. We can witness the event, and yet the power to hold on to it, to control it, is elusive and beyond human ability. There's no special condition one must possess, no unique theological, social, political, national, racial, biological trait one must have to feel the power of a sunrise and sunset, to feel the power of the going out of the morning and the evening. They are one of the truly universal experiences on earth. And they remind us, even when we are busy and captivated by the worries of the day, that we are held in space by a power beyond our understanding. This picture here, I saw a sunset And despite my knowledge that these events are hard to capture, I stopped my car and took this picture. We were driving through Mounds Park, which overlooks St. Paul, and even though I think the picture turned out well, the image pales in comparison to reality. I say this image because I like the intersection of the divine and humanity that I see in it. It's as though God and humans have put their best work on display, each competing for glory. Paris, London, Rome, those great historic cities that tourists go to visit in Europe may have more glamour and architectural creativity than St. Paul, but this landscape reveals the power of human wisdom. There's skyscrapers and electricity. The power to take water from underneath the earth and weave it through pipes into buildings so people don't have to travel with a bucket to the well is visible in this picture. Planes are taking off and landing. The glass windows in those buildings would be something Jesus never experienced. And yet, for all its beauty, everything human in this picture will one day break down or be destroyed. Pipes will leak and need to be replaced. Light bulbs will burn out. Steel beams will even need to be replaced. And yet the citizens of modern St. Paul look at the same sunset that native people witnessed 4,000 years ago. And long after we're gone, future generations will be looking at that same sunset. To be the good is to be humble enough to realize all of us stand, breathe, and live in the presence of the Creator. May these events, may these words, so that those who dwell at the ends of the earth are in awe at your signs. You make the going out of the morning and the evening to shout for joy, remind us of this truth. My younger self would have found trouble with verse 9 of the psalm today. You visit the earth and water it. You greatly enrich it. The river of God is full of water. You provide the grain, so you have prepared it. This sounds great when you're in a cabin fishing on a lake, or you just got done inner tubing behind a boat on a summer vacation. But how do people living through a drought hear these words? In the 1980s, it was a difficult time for ranchers and farmers in North Dakota. The community was stressed by both drought and farm crisis. Good people were losing their livelihood, and many felt powerless to stop it. Why? Because they could not cause the skies to rain. Where was God watering the earth and greatly enriching it during that time of drought? I remember the phone calls where the stress of drought was playing heavy on my brother-in-law and his wife's life, on their heart and their mind. Those were not good days. Could you imagine, as I listened to their pain, if I turned around and listened to that pain and said, "Oh, rejoice in the Lord, though. God visits the earth and waters it. The river of God is overflowing and the grain is overflowing." He would have told me, God must not know how to get to North Dakota. And I know the snarky side of me who said, there's a lot of people that feel that way. Then something changed. God did not change. Dick and Jamie changed their ranching practices. Instead of fighting the land, forcing it to produce under foreign conditions, they started to work in harmony with the land. They started doing no-till farming, protecting the soil from wind erosion. They planted drought-resistant crops that dug down deep into the soil and drew the water out from beneath the ground, instead of waiting for the water to fall from the sky. The more they worked in harmony with creation, the more they learned that God really has watered the earth and the river of God really is full. In the last 10 years, North Dakota has experienced drought conditions similar to the conditions in the 80s. And while rain would make life easier, it has not been life-threatening. They are working in harmony with the Creator and discovering that God does provide. The whole state of North Dakota works in better harmony with creation than before because those wetlands and marshlands that were bone dry in the 80s are now watered and stabled. Changed farm practices have led to changed lives. They no longer just plant crops to be pulled from the ground. They plant so as to continue to enrich the soil, and the change practice has been more cost-effective to the whole operation. And I find this one really fascinating. You might not find it so well, but just humor me a little bit. But Dick told me how what they started doing was planting eggplants and mixed it in with their other crops. And after the harvest, when the cattle went to graze the land, the eggplants provided nutrients to the cattle that they didn't have to go out and buy an extra crop to provide. And when the eggplants were dead and gone, and when they done grazing the field, the eggplants that weren't eaten just died in the soil and enriched the soil and continued to sustain that soil. And I thought that was fascinating. The psalmist understands what I'm talking about. Psalm 65 is a song of praise and thanksgiving. It begins in the parts we don't read, praising God for how God saves us. God listens to our prayers. God forgives our sins. God leads us out of isolation to a deep, connected relationship with God. And then the psalmist praises how creation tells the same story, a story of God's abundance. And the psalmist uses water as an image of how God cares for us. And even though this ancient writer has very little understanding about the larger universe, they are wise enough to know humans and all life on earth are dependent upon the water God provides for life. What the psalmist understands and we repeatedly forget is that life is most robust and dynamic when we live in harmony with creation. And this is true because this is how the Creator formed the universe to work. As I've shared with you before, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. The city and its people have a long, well-documented history of poisoning the land and the water. And the effects of that poisoning have also poisoned the people. You don't need this experience to know the impact of living in harmony with creation, though. Your soul feels it. Your soul feels the difference between walking through a town where the buildings are run down and garbage is overflowing and a pristine forest with a babbling brook and birds singing in the trees. The thing we most often forget, though, is how our neighbors are God's creation. When we think of living in harmony with creation, we tend to think of water and trees and land and birds and animals. One of the lessons I learned from living in urban places was that human beings are like beautiful sunsets and beautiful sunrises. Meaning what most people see the handiwork of God in the rising and the setting of the sun, but I see the fingerprints of God in my neighbor. It's been a long, hard week at Advent for both staff and volunteers. Someone has been in this building every single day and every single night. We've all put in long hours. There's been no time for staff to have a day off this week. And as long as it has been amazingly beautiful. Advent has felt like a home that welcomes both family and strangers to come in and dine at the table of the Lord. It's been emotional and beautiful. Watching the volunteers care for families wounded by death has been like the most beautiful sunset I've ever witnessed. And like beautiful sunsets, it's impossible to capture all of its glory in an image or with words to share with you. To all who have helped this week, thank you for being kind. It was really nice. But I don't need to thank you, do I? You already know the joy and glory of serving. So let us take verse 8 in Psalm 65, and let's say it this way. So that those who dwell at the ends of the earth are in awe of your signs, you make the serving of our people, of your people, to shout for joy. Amen.